Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a week of Linux and security news for the 24th of September 2017. Well, starting in the news this week that the antivirus company Avast was distributing CCleaner with a Trojan infected in it. Oh lovely, when an antivirus company actually goes and infects you, yeah, brilliant. They're doing their jobs well, aren't they? So the discovery came from Cisco, when they were testing out a beta version of their vulnerability analysis tool, and made for some interesting reading because they were the first people to discover it, this Trojan that was infected in there. So it was about 2 months that CCleaner was being distributed for and affected version 5.33. Yes, version 5.33 and that build number. So doing the updates to version 5.34 will solve the problem and get rid of the Trojan infection. Although the software is being distributed by Piriform and the certificate is signed by Piriform and Symantec, it was Avast that has actually bought out Piriform, so yeah, effectively Avast was distributing this malware-laden version. The malware primarily communicates to a command and control server via the IP address 216.126.225.148, but if it's unable to connect directly via the IP address, it goes through a few different domains. And these are domains listed, very random, and yeah, that's set for certain years and months, so it would change. And certainly the results from OpenDNS show a distinct cutoff from the end of August and the beginning of September. So following the discovery, ClamAV, which is owned by Cisco, was the first to recognise CCleaner as malicious. That has changed now. Quite a few of the antivirus companies now detect CCleaner as malicious, or that particular version. So if you are using CCleaner on Windows, just do your updates and you will escape the malware infection. But I do have to think the irony of all this being distributed by an antivirus company. Great. But we don't want to feel left out on the Linux side, so from the register, IoT Botnet linux.proxym has been spewing spam out rather than DDoSing. I don't know which is worse. Probably the spam, really. The Internet of Tat botnet is making a nuisance of itself online after becoming a conduit for spam distribution. So the botnet first surfaced in February 2017, reaching a size of nearly 10,000 devices by June. The botnet has halved in size since then, but even at 5,000 devices, yeah, that still represents a bit of a threat because each device has been sending up to 400 emails a day, so that is, well, 200,000 emails going out per day on someone else's equipment, of course. It's not owned by the attacker, so yeah, still a fair few spam emails going around. The exploit for this is default passwords on Open Telnet and SSH connections, such as CCTV cameras, personal video recorders, and routers. It's not actually a vulnerability against Linux, it's just poor password protection. From OMG Ubuntu, the Ubuntu Dock now has dynamic transparency. Well, this is more of a replication of the Unity desktop now, isn't it? But the one thing that gets me about it is the layout. Let's go to the full screen version. So the application launcher is at the bottom. Where is it on the Unity desktop? At the top of the screen. Well, that's just going to confuse anyone who's used to using the Unity desktop, which, let's face it, could have been a few years now, since it came out in, 2011, wasn't it? So yeah, 6 years of the Unity desktop. You now have to relearn everything for the Ubuntu 17.10 release with the GNOME desktop. I'm not sure it has the option to move the launcher to the top of the screen there. I know the Dock does have that feature, but this is a fork of Dock, so don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but certainly at the time I looked at it during the alpha stage of development, it did not have that feature. From NotPetya, Sony's PlayStation 4 DualShock controller is now supported in Fedora Linux, well, the GNOME desktop it's mentioning here. It's even easier to connect a PS3 or PS4 controller nowadays. I forgot which version of Linux kernel does have those drivers built in by default, but certainly in Ubuntu 16.04 you can connect it reasonably easy. It doesn't sound as bad as trying to connect it via Fedora, so what you would have to do is connect it via the USB and then press the P button on the joypad to connect it. If you're just trying to change the joypad, it would forget its original console and you would need to plug it in again. Yeah, fair enough, that does sound a bit of a faff. But now with the latest patches, it's even easier to set up a DualShock controller. Just open the Bluetooth panel in the GNOME settings, plug in the controller via USB and click Allow to confirm the Bluetooth connection. Hang on, this sounds more complicated than what it is in Ubuntu. I don't even have to connect it via the USB, just press the P button on the joypad and it connects. Unless I'm missing something, unless that's just a first time connection. But it doesn't mention it in this article, so... Okay, whatever it is, it's slightly easier than it was before. From its FOSS, Manjaro Linux discontinues 32-bit support. Well, I'm actually not too surprised really, because Arch itself has dropped the 32-bit support. So Manjaro 1704.3 is the latest release to have 32-bit ISO. During September and October, the 32-bit package will continue to be updated. However, starting in November, packages will be limited to 64-bit only. After that period, 32-bit installs of Manjaro will essentially be unsupported. I think that's pretty similar to the cycle for Arch. So what are your alternatives? So you can have Debian or Ubuntu, yes. Another possible alternative is Void Linux. This rolling release distribution is built completely from scratch with its own package manager. I don't know that one. Or you could check out Arch Linux 32, which is a community supported version. But to be fair, the majority of computers nowadays are 64-bit, so I don't blame Manjaro for dropping to 32-bit. They are certainly not the only Linux distro that has done that. We have KDE Neon and Arch have gone down this route. And I certainly think more Linux distributions will be going that way because it makes it simpler for testing. Another article from NotPetya, Kali Linux 2017.2 has been released and it introduces some new security tools. So Kali Linux is the ethical hacking and pen testing Linux distribution. Ethical hacking, also used by script kiddies. Oh, and ethical hackers, yes. So what is new in this latest version of Kali Linux? So I can mention the HUL, URL and hexadecimal encoder and decoder, dbeaver Universal SQL Client, apps2 automated pen testing toolkit, and a fishery tool for injecting SSL-enabled auth phishing URLs into Word documents. The fishery tool sounds quite interesting for doing ethical pen testing of businesses. Additionally, there's SSH Audit, an auditor tool for checking encryption, compression types, banners, etc. Bloodhound tool for analysing Active Directory trust relationships, Brute Spray for brute forcing Nmap outputs, and CrackMap exec post-exploitation tool to automate the assessment of large Active Directory networks. Yeah, I keep meaning to go back and do some more Kali Linux tutorials, and yeah, I will do. It's just been quite a lot on lately, but I was going to say I might have a bit more time, but I wanted to go and do a few things in my house again, but I have finished a certification I was trying to do on quite a long-winded training course that I've been doing. Yeah, I finally finished it on Friday and passed the exam, so yes, quite happy with that. So I will have a bit more time later in the year, hopefully. I saw this blog post about the evolution of Plasma Mobile. So yeah, Plasma Mobile started back in around 2006, and in 2009 Plasma Netbook was created. So there was a bit of testing done there, and that was used on the Asus EEPC, or EEE-PC I should say, because there was far too many E's there. There was even a version of Plasma Mobile back in 2010 on a Nokia N900. That looks a bit small, that phone, doesn't it, compared to nowadays? Plasma Active running on a Nexus 7. Plasma Mobile 2, so the Plasma Active project in 2015, we regrouped and started to build rather than a simple smartphone user interface along with reference software stack that will allow us to not only develop Plasma Mobile further, but allow us to run on a growing number of devices. Plasma Mobile's goal wasn't to get the most innovative of features out, but to create a bread and butter platform, a base to develop applications on. From a technology point of view, Plasma is actually very small. It shares approximately 95% of its code with its desktop companion. Widgets and increasingly applications are interchangeable between the two. Most important that, simplified development. So Plasma Mobile in any shape or form has never been this close to actually making it into the hands and pockets of end users. A collaboration project with Purism, a company bringing privacy and software freedom to end users, may create the first Plasma phone for end users to have on it in the market as soon as January 2019. So I've mentioned about this project a couple of times before, so that was kind of the lead up to the next story, which GNOME Foundation partners with Purism to support its efforts to build the Librem5 Purism smartphone. So this is a bit confusing now. Which way is the project going? So I've seen now both GNOME and KDE are kind of fighting to support this platform, really. An article from Its FOSS kind of helps get an idea of where this is actually going. So yes, the librem 5 is supported by GNOME and KDE. As mentioned, it is a $1.5 million funding goal for the project. Now I did state this seems fairly small and reasonable, yeah, for a small manufacturing run of what is actually a fairly complex computer, and does have quite a few unique features on it, such as physical hardware on-off switches for the microphone and camera. Yes, that is an unusual feature for a phone. But check out the specs of the project's page to see some more information about it, so I'm not going to cover it in this video. The initial plan was to ship the phone with the GNOME desktop environment, but now Purism partnering with both GNOME and KDE teams in order to test, support and develop with KDE and the KDE community, as well as using the Qt toolkit and GTK to develop applications. Purism had already used GNOME for its Pure OS software, which it is used on tablets and laptop computers. They say they will continue to test both GNOME and KDE's based software and will decide after the project is funded which to ship the phone with. So now I don't know everyone to actually support the project because I would rather have the KDE based phone than the GNOME based. It kind of goes in more with what I'm using on a day-to-day basis. I use KDE on a day-to-day basis, but I could imagine someone who uses GNOME on a day-to-day basis would rather see the GNOME desktop on the phone. Of course, that's a problem with having too much choice here in Linux. Well, saying too much choice, we only have 2 to choose from, but yeah, that's kind of a 50-50 chance of which way it's going to go, whether you get your preference or you don't. From CNBC, shipping company Maersk says its cyber attack in June cost up to $300 million, and that was the NotPetya cyber attack. This is the one that came out after WannaCry and exploited exactly the same vulnerabilities that WannaCry did. I've got absolutely no sympathy for the company. I remember with WannaCry it had that kill switch domain, so after that was registered and launched, WannaCry pretty much died off. But NotPetya lacked that same feature, or at least implemented it differently. Anyone who was exploited with NotPetya basically did not do their updates that were critical and had been out for at least a couple of months. So no sympathy really. I'm talking about a company who's failed to do updates. Equifax, or Equifax as I like calling them now. So according to Ars Technica, the hack was started 4 months before it was actually detected, and they announced it was detected between May and June before, and no, the actual original exploit started back in March. So the first evidence of hackers' interaction with Equifax network occurred on March the 10th. This is according to the investigation done by FireEye. The attackers managed to set up 30 web shells which allowed them to remotely enter the same sorts of powerful commands available to high-privileged Equifax administrators. The hidden pages would remain even after the Apache Struts exploit was patched. Yeah, it was the Apache Struts exploit that was basically the one that gave away all this data, because they failed to patch it well, it was an urgent patch and they failed to sort it out for a couple of months. In other words, absolute incompetence led to 143 million sensitive data records being let out to the outside world. So FireEye reports that it detected about 35 IP addresses the attackers used across the company's network. Nice. Well, that's someone with considerable resources. That's not a script kiddie as such, I wouldn't have said. But then again, I don't think it's a nation-state hack either. Well, could be nation-state, or it just could be a criminal gang. But for this week's stupid news, it goes to Equifax again, because the Equifax official Twitter feed sent victims to a malicious website. Well done. So, the actual website was Equifax2017.com, where victims and users could get information about the hack and find out whether they had their information breached. However, someone has set up a domain called securityequifax2017.com, and sure enough, on the Twitter feed here, yes, from Equifax Inc. Hi, for more information about the product and enrollment, please visit securityequifax2017.com. Well done. And the same again. In an emailed statement, Equifax officials said all posts using the wrong link have been taken down. To confirm the correct website is, as I stated earlier, equifaxsecurity2017.com. We apologise for the confusion. Damn right. So as we can see, Equifax's handling of the breach has been just absolutely appalling. They really have rewritten the rulebook on how not to deal with a breach. So that was a week of Linux and security news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.